That's probably why people that use their weekends to sleep in have such horrible Mondays.
When you wake up in the morning and sunlight hits your eyes and melatonin stops, your brain sets a timer for exactly 14 hours later.
14 hours, right?
Right. So it's called the melatonin phase response curve.
Yeah.
Right. And so here's what happens. If you're waking up at 6 during the week, 14 hours later is 8 p.m. That's when melatonin kicks off, takes about 90 minutes to kick in gear. You start to feel sleepy around 9:30, 10 o'clock, and now you're falling in bed, right? But if you've been at 6 and now you wake up at 8, you sleep in to that grand number of 8 a.m.,
Yes.
guess what? Your melatonin doesn't kick off for an extra 2 hours. If you do this for 2 days in a row, your entire body wants to shift to the new schedule. That's why Mondays suck, right?
Yeah.
Because you stay up late on Friday, sleep in on Saturday, stay up late on Saturday, sleep in on Sunday. What do you think your body wants to do on Sunday?
Monday.
Right.
Right,
It wants
yeah.
to sleep in.
Exactly.
It's a
yeah.
mess.
Dr. Breus, I'm so excited you're finally here on the
I
podcast.
know. We're here.
Yeah,
I'm stoked.
We've talked so much over the years. We've known each other for a long time.
We're friends. Like
Yeah.
everybody should know. Like we're friends. We hang out.
Yes.
Like we like each other. Like the whole thing.
Yeah, and I love it. And I love also just, we've shared the stage many times
Absolutely.
and many different venues. And we're going to be here in Barcelona pretty
I
soon.
know. I'm pretty excited about that.
excited
That's going to be a
about that.
lot of fun. And we're going to Utah soon.
Yes, yes. Oh, yeah, I forgot. Next weekend.
I know.
Right? And I wanted to ask you, we're actually doing a Next Health Wellness Conference at our new location,
Oh,
which
cool.
we just opened in Nashville. It'll be in
I
April.
love Nashville.
Well,
Nash
you're,
Vegas, baby.
You're invited to come and talk.
Oh, I'd love to.
I'd
Let's
love
do it.
for you
For
to come
sure,
to
for
our
sure.
first. It's our first Next Health Wellness Conference. It's going to be in Nashville. It's going
Amazing.
to be a full day of every topic on health, wellness, and longevity. And I'd love to have you
Incredible.
there. Great.
I'll consider it done.
All right. Well, we're consider it done. Well, today's conversation that I wanted to have with you is on your latest book, these 3 incredibly huge topics. I'm glad they're like spelled out there: sleep, drink, and breathe.
Yep. So it's been interesting for me because I think wellness has gotten too complicated.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm at the gym. Tell me if you have this experience. I go to the gym and people are there just kind of walking around like, do I go get a green drink? Do I get into the cold plunge? What do I do? Right? And it's not that complicated. I was listening to one of your other guests, Dr. Andy Galpin, on one of your former pods, and he said just do something.
Yeah.
Right? It's like we're in the habit of starting habits.
Right.
Like that's what you and I do is we try to get people to do positive habits towards their health. Right? And so that's where I think this gets interesting because it's just so complicated out there. But I'm saying all you have to do is sleep, hydrate, and breathe. Like that is the beginning of anybody's wellness journey, right? And here's the thing. Most people don't do them well enough to understand some of the benefits that you can get, right? So if you get crappy sleep all the time, you're not going to feel so great, right? If you're not drinking enough water, you're not going to feel so great. You might drink enough water to sustain yourself, to sustain life, but having energy and being able to spend time with your friends and family and having purpose in your life, all of that comes from having a well-hydrated brain and body, right? Same holds true with breathing, right? You can't really go very long without breathing, but if you don't do it the right way, you're not going to get the benefits from it. And that took me a while to figure out, by the way, but I started to notice like when I go for a run, right, how am I breathing before I run in one pattern? Then as I start to run, my breathing pattern changes. And then when I'm at a full gait, my breathing has changed as well. So I started to realize that there are different times of breathing and different types of breathing and different ways to breathe that can have tremendous, tremendous effects on your overall life. So sleep, drink, breathe. Like wellness is too freaking complicated.
Yeah, I love it how you break it down and totally simplify it. You've been talking about sleep. I mean, you're the sleep doctor.
I am.
That is you. So you've been talking about sleep for a long time. I've learned a lot from you about sleep. I've learned about, having a good sleep routine.
Absolutely.
Fixing your environment to get optimal sleep.
Yeah.
And, really understanding what optimal sleep means. We've had a lot of talk about wearable devices and deep sleep versus REM sleep and these kind of things. And you've written many books on sleep, right?
Yeah, this is my fifth
book on, okay. So
You'd think I'd run out of things to say, right?
But what I love about it is every book I learn something new.
That's the goal.
I would love for you to kind of dive into a little bit of just a primer on sleep from your vantage point as
Absolutely.
being, one of the most educated, knowledgeable speakers on sleep. Kind of, can we do a little primer and then kind of some of the new things that we'll learn when we read this book?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the basics, things that people need to know and understand about how does sleep work, right? So the basics are inside your brain, there are two specific systems for sleep. One is called sleep drive. The other is called sleep rhythm, okay? Very, very basic, right? So when a cell eats a piece of glucose, something comes out the back end. One of those things is called adenosine, works its way through your system, accumulates, makes you feel sleepy. That's sleep drive. Sleep rhythm is your circadian rhythm. Now, you and I have many discussions about circadian rhythms because my third book, The Power of When, I created a circadian rhythm sort of sleep animal for people to figure out called your chronotype. Now, I did not invent the term chronotype. I want to be super duper clear about that. We've known about chronotypes forever. So folks in the audience, you might be saying, what is this guy talking about? I'm talking about if you're an early bird or a night owl. Those are chronotypes. And those are specific patterns that are actually genetic. Right. So I was talking with one of your staff and she said to me, I got to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning because I got stuff to do. I'm like, well, I hope your chronotype is aligned with something like that. Otherwise, it's going to be pretty tough to do those things. So what people need to understand is you actually have a genetically pre-programmed sleep schedule, and it's in your body. Believe it or not, you can actually find it on 23andMe or Ancestry.com if you want to. They have reports on morningness, eveningness, things like that. If people want to learn an easy way to do it, swing on over to my website, thesleepdoctor.com. You can go to Chrono Quiz, and you can take my quiz. In about 4 minutes, you're going to figure out which one of these you actually are. Now, it turns out what I'm famous for is I found a fourth chronotype.
Right.
So we used to know early birds, night owls, people in the middle, right? I discovered that there was a fourth one that's an irregular sleep pattern.
Dolphin, right?
Dolphin, exactly. And it makes up 10% of the population, right? We have 350 million people here in the United States. That's 35 million people. That's a lot of people who've got disrupted sleep. And so number one, know your chronotype because it tells you what your bedtime should be. The second biggest thing that people can do is wake up at the same time 7 days a week. Now, you're going to say to yourself, what? Michael, I want to sleep in on the weekends. I want to catch up. Like this, come on, can we do this? Let me explain why this just turns out to not be the best idea. You will catch up on some sleep, don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, this is not going to produce for you the type of sleep that you're looking for, right? So as an example, if you're on a diet, you don't just eat salads 5 days a week and chocolate cake 2 days a week, right? That's not how that works, right? Otherwise, you ain't going to lose any weight. You've got to follow the consistency throughout. And also, I think you and Galpin I keep harping on him, but a lot of the things that you find out in fitness actually work really well in sleep.
Right.
So if you can have that repetitive nature to it and have that consistency, your body knows what to do. So what I've discovered is if you can wake up at the same time every day, it actually helps you fall asleep better at night. Let me explain the biology. You already know this, but for the audience, here's what's interesting, is your core body temperature rises throughout the night, and it hits a peak around 10:30 and then begins to drop. That's a signal to your brain to release melatonin, let you start to go to sleep. Then your core body temperature drops, okay? At some point in time, if it doesn't increase, you go hypothermic. That ain't good, right? No. It happens somewhere between 1 and 3 in the morning. That's when most people have a tendency to wake up from sleep, right? So number one, if you're waking up from sleep in the middle of the night, it's not your fault. It's biology. But here's the thing. Most people, they're going to, and they roll over and they fall back asleep. Or they get up, they go pee, and they come back to bed and they go sleep, right? What ends up happening then is they fall back asleep and then you wake up the next morning, right? Seems like a pretty interesting process, very biological, no big problems here. I left out one step. Right when your body starts to produce melatonin, when you wake up in the morning and sunlight hits your eyes and melatonin stops, your brain sets a timer for exactly 14 hours later.
14 hours, right?
Right. So it's called the melatonin phase response curve, right? And so here's what happens. If you're waking up at 6 during the week, 14 hours later is 8 p.m. That's when melatonin kicks off, takes about 90 minutes to kick in gear. You start to feel sleepy around 9:30, 10 o'clock, and now you're falling in bed, right? But if you've been at 6 and now you wake up at 8, you sleep in to that grand number of 8 a.m.
Yes.
Guess what? Your melatonin doesn't kick off for an extra 2 hours. So instead of kicking off at 8, it kicks off at 10, takes even longer. If you do this for 2 days in a row, your entire body wants to shift to the new schedule.
Got it.
That's called social jet lag, and that sucks.
Yeah.
So if you can just keep your sleep, wake up at the same time every day, set an alarm to wake up at the same time every single day, based on your chronotype, preferably, you will absolutely see a 30 to 40% improvement in your sleep in 3 weeks. No question about it.
That's probably why people that use their weekends to sleep in, have such horrible Mondays.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, that's why Mondays suck, right?
Yeah.
Because you stay up late on Friday, sleep in on Saturday. Stay up late on Saturday, sleep in on Sunday. What do you think your body wants to do on Sunday?
Monday.
Right. It wants to sleep in.
Exactly.
It's a mess.
I love that. So figuring out your chronotype.
Figuring out your chronotype.
chronoquiz.com.
Absolutely. Then also waking up at the same time every single day. And then I think the third big thing that's important out there that we need to think through is sleep disorders don't just go away. So many people say to me things like, oh, of course I'm exhausted. I've got 4 kids.
Yeah.
You know, or, oh, I used to have sleep apnea. I lost 5 pounds and it went away. Bullshit. Okay. Like I'm here to tell you, like, that's not how it works. Right. Like if you've got a sleep disorder, it isn't going to magically disappear. And also there's one thing that I've noticed is there's really 2 things that go on with sleep. Either you have a sleep disorder or you have messed up sleep and it's a window to something else. Right. So when you wake up and you feel unrefreshed, that's not how it's supposed to work. Something else is potentially going on in this unit here that you need to potentially investigate. Sleep sometimes can be that early warning signal of like, hey, something's not going well here. You know, like I need you to focus on this. And that can have apnea, does that very easily. Most people don't even know that sleep apnea, I mean, between 12 and 18% of the entire population has sleep apnea.
Yeah. And most people don't even know they have sleep apnea.
1 in 5. Like, think about that for a second. Like, you hang out with 5 people, one person there's probably got sleep apnea.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting when you start to think through and look at some of these idea sets. And so very first thing I do with people is I screen them for sleep disorders, right? And I think that's a valuable tool for everybody out there. And now the real question is, oh my gosh, well, do I have to go to a sleep lab now? Do I have to find a sleep doctor? Like, do I have to go to the hospital? Like, what does all that look like, right? So here's the good news. Since COVID, that has changed.
Yeah.
Everything is now home testing.
Sure.
I can send a ring home with you. I can send a wrist unit home with you, or I can just push a button, have it sent to your house. You do the whole thing through telemedicine.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's only $200.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So like we do that on my website. Andy Galpin does that as well. So it's like it's getting assessment is accessible and it's cheap.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to be in a lab where somebody else slept the night before since COVID.
Exactly. Right. And, you know, I feel like for most people, in our clinic here especially, I would say about half the people get some sort of sleep evaluation done because a lot of them, even though they don't particularly know they are having disordered sleep, they exhibit signs of it, like you said, like they're tired early in the morning, or they're unable to stay up throughout the entire day. And there's a lot of problems that are occurring in people's lives is related to sleep, but they have never tracked their sleep, so they have no idea.
Right.
And we encourage people to do at least 1 week of sleep tracking. And so, you know, you introduced me to the folks at Happy Ring. I'm really happy with that product.
It is a great product.
Yeah.
So let's talk about tracking for a half a second. Is that okay?
I would love to.
Let's talk about tracking for a half a second because number one, there are a lot of types of trackers out there, and we need to be thoughtful when we look at these data. Okay, because number one, accuracy is an issue. All right, so like you see me, I'm wearing the Aura ring. I use the Happy Ring sometimes. There's also another unit that you can wear on your wrist. I want to be very, very clear. Only certain trackers have been FDA approved to treat sleep disorders. Happy Ring is an example of one of those. An Aura ring is not diagnostic in nature. It is a tracker, meaning all it does is it feeds you back the data that it is collecting. So let's talk about that data that it collects for a half a second. So Aura is probably the best out there, but to be fair, it's probably 80 to 85% accurate. And when you look at the studies, it's good at telling you when you fall asleep and when you wake up. What it's not good at is going into the depth of sleep. Dude, I can't count the number of people. You've seen it happen. When we've at parties, people walk up to me with their phone and they say, here's my score. What does it mean? Like, I only got 14 minutes of deep sleep, Michael. Like, what's going on with me, right? So here's what I tell people all the time. Don't look at the data point. Look for the trend, right? You want to know about the delta. So if every day your ring says that you got 14 minutes of deep sleep, I don't think I care. But if it says 14 minutes one day, 407 the next, and 632 the next, I want to know what happened on those days, right? Because it's okay that it's not accurate as long as it's being consistently not accurate. I'll also tell you that there are some people that get kind of obsessed with the metrics, right? Like so many people are like, I'm really trying and I'm only getting 7 hours and 43 minutes. And I'm like, dude, you are lost your marbles. Like, sleep is flexible, right? Like people need to understand something. Like, let me give you a basic principle that I don't think people really can appreciate. is just before you go to bed, your body basically kind of scans itself. And by the way, it's been doing it all day. And it looks at what kind of physical pressures did you put on yourself and what kind of emotional pressures did you put on yourself. And by the way, then it determines how much of each stage of sleep you need. So remember, stage 3, 4 is physical restoration. So if you go on a 3-hour hike, you're going to get more deep sleep.
That's so interesting.
Right? If you have an incredibly emotional day, you're going to get more REM sleep because that's where more emotion comes through, right? And so your body kind of knows this. So what I'm trying to get people to think about is they need to trust their body.
Yeah.
You know, like who's it? Mark Hyman said something the other day I thought was great. He said, "You're the best doctor in the room, yourself," right?
Yeah.
Like, you know your body better than anybody out there. And I mean, you've seen this in your patients. You know, everybody's different.
Everyone's so different.
Even if they look exactly the same physiologically, they're still different.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's the thing that people have to remember is sleep is flexible. There is no one number for sleep, right? So there are a lot of experts out there who are going to say, oh, you have to get, 7 to 9 hours of sleep. There's an expert that says 8 is the great, you've got to do that. Yeah, well, to be fair, I've been seeing patients for 26 years.
Yeah.
Okay? Very few people get 8 hours of sleep.
Yeah, very few.
And by the way, I don't.
Yeah.
Okay, I get about 6 hours and 15, sometimes 45 minutes of sleep.
Right.
I've had no caffeine today. This is how much energy I have, and it's 10 o'clock in the morning.
That's awesome.
I've already worked out, right? I've already hit the sauna. Like, I've already run, and here I am. So it's like, it's very, very possible to have a very nice lifestyle on less sleep. But again, it's individualized.
Sure.
And by the way, that can change.
Right.
So with my female patients, as an example, sometimes I give them different bedtimes based on where they are in their menstruation.
Sure.
Right? So prior to their period, they're exhausted, so they go to bed earlier. After their period, they're the Energizer Bunny, and so they can go to bed later.
Got it.
Be flexible.
Yeah. So with the trackers, if the rings are not that good at telling you how much deep sleep you have or REM sleep, are there other methods that are better?
So to be honest with you, no, there aren't. So here's the thing. When you wake up in the morning, how you feel physically, that gives you a very good indication.
That's the best indication.
Absolutely. You are your best thermometer, I swear. And so what I tell people all the time is, again, look at the tracker data once a week. Look at the trend of it. See which direction you might be going in. I'm also one of those guys, like, I weigh myself once a week.
Yeah.
Right? Just to be on point.
Sure.
Because what I don't want things to do is creep in the wrong direction.
Yeah, for months and months. Right?
Exactly. Same holds true with sleep. That's how I would utilize the trackers there. I wouldn't use them to be diagnostic.
Right.
A lot of people are like, well, I have to get this much sleep because I read that this happens here. And dude, you are out the window on this one. Like, trust me on this. I've been doing this for 26 years. It's not how sleep works.
Yeah. So I guess what you're saying, just overarching principle, is as long as you're maintaining good sleep routines and you're feeling refreshed the next day and you feel like you have energy, that's good.
You're probably in great shape. And I don't care how much you sleep. If you tell me that you go to bed on the regular, wake up on the regular, and feel good, I don't ever want to see you in my office.
Yeah, and you're right. Some of the people that have the trackers, they're feeling great, but they're super concerned that they're getting 30 minutes of deep sleep according to their tracker.
I do a group sleep coaching now. So I just started this with a YPO, actually. We're doing this group sleep coaching where I've got 7 people and I'm coaching them all at the same time. And half the people are like, well, what are you saying, Dr. Breus? Are you saying I don't need 8 hours of sleep? And I'm like, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right? And it's almost like I'm having to pull them out of this old vernacular, this old idea in their head. So, like, remember the food pyramid?
Yes.
Right? And you remember how terrible that was?
Yes.
That's 8 hours of sleep.
Diet.
Exactly. 8 hours falls into that food pyramid universe.
Got it. Well, that's super interesting to know because I think that a lot of people also like having numbers that they can follow and optimize along.
Sure.
But I think it's important to know with sleep. It's really so individualized depending on your chronotype, first of all.
Absolutely.
And there, like you said, that I just want to highlight there are specific genes that have been identified.
Oh, yes.
Based
correct.
on.
So if you go into the PER3 area, a single nucleotide polymorphism, and you look at PER3, by the way, there's about 60 different markers that can do circadian rhythmicity, but that one appears to be one of the biggest. That's where you start to see these differences of the early bird, the night owl, people in the middle, and then people that are all messed up.
Got it. And there's certain tips that you've also given people around their environment of sleep, right?
Absolutely.
So I think, can you give me just some quick 2 or 3 things, or maybe 5 things that people can do to optimize their sleep environment?
Sure. So when we're looking at sleep environment, I would say, and I'm going to give you some unfamiliar ones, things that people may not already know. So I think the number one thing I would say, first of all, buy an air filter. Okay, an air purifier, air filter, and put it in your bedroom. Why? It's the room you spend the most time in your house. Right. We want that air to be nice and clean. Right. And so number one, I think the air becomes an issue. And that's across the board. Everybody out, $30 and on Amazon, buy yourself an air filter for your bedroom. Okay, good. That's number one thing.
Does the air quality affect the quality of your sleep?
Absolutely, it does, right? So we're here in Los Angeles, right? And there was the devastational wildfires that came through here.
That's
right?
what I'm asking.
Right. Well, let's do a double tap. Let's talk about that for a second, right? So when we start to look at air quality, does air quality affect your sleep? You bet it does. So when my daughter did an exchange program and lived in Beijing for 6 months, and when she would call me and she'd say, "Dad, the AQI is high," and I'd say, "What's an AQI?" And she'd say, "The air quality index." I didn't even know what it was, right? And so fast forward 4 years later, 5 years later, now we have these wildfires that are going on here in Los Angeles and the surrounding area, and then we start to think about, how is that affecting sleep? So one area I think it's affecting sleep in is air quality. No question about it. It's certainly something that we're thinking about. So the next question is, how is air quality affecting sleep, Michael? So number one, when your air quality is low, it means you don't have as much oxygen in your air, right? There's other constituents in there. That's the air quality issue, right? And so when that's going into your lungs are now having to deal with whatever that new particulate is, whatever that new substance is. And so it's trying to look at and understand what it is. So the gas exchange slows down, right? Because it's just not as much air. There's other stuff in there, like it's kind of going on. And so when you start to see things like that, you start to see people's respiratory rate and depth change. And when your respiratory rate and depth change, it changes your sleep.
Got it.
Right?
Yes.
So when you change your respiratory rate and you speed it up, you can't be in a deep stage of sleep.
Makes total sense,
right? You push you into a lighter stage of sleep. So now you're breathing bad air and you're in a lighter stage of sleep. Right? So it's not good for you. But I also want to say that I think something else is going on with the wildfires here in Los Angeles. I think it's fear.
Yeah. I think people don't feel safe when they're sleeping.
I think that when you wake up one morning and you walk out your door and your neighbor, who you may or may not like, but you know who it is, who's walking the dog at 7 o'clock that barks in the morning, is gone.
Right.
Your church, your synagogue, your mosque is gone. Right. Your dry cleaner and your school is gone. Everything that is fundamental to your feeling safe and grounded has left. Including, by the way, all of your possessions, more than likely. And you probably had a grand total of 20, 30 minutes before you had to get out of your house after you got the alert. That's some scary shit. Yeah. Right? So fundamentally, I don't think people can sleep when they're scared. Right. It's the most vulnerable position you could possibly be in, right?
We're probably biologically wired not to sleep during those times.
Exactly. Right? So what I think is really going on here is I think a lot of people are having massive problems with safety. And when you're not feeling safe, you don't sleep.
Yeah.
So I think that's where a lot of this is coming from. And so I want to be super duper clear. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I want to be super duper clear. Everybody who is affected by the fires in any way, shape, or form, whether you live here or you don't live here, you're not supposed to be sleeping well right now. To be clear, that is a normal reaction to what's going on.
And does this take time to just resolve itself, or are there things people can do to feel safer?
So we're talking about environment. We're talking about sleep environment here. And so number one, people need to get into an environment that is safe. So I was talking about air quality as an environmental issue. Safety is an environmental issue, okay? You must feel safe. And what does it mean to do that? So I'm going to tell you about something that's kind of unique that happens at my house. So my wife, you know my wife, Lauren, right? So here's what goes on with her. When we go to bed at night, there's a big screen TV on all night long, and there are 2 French bulldogs in the bed right next to us all night. I'm the sleep doctor, dude.
I know, I was gonna say.
Right? She feels safe with the dogs there.
Yeah. For sure. It's like an alarm system.
Absolutely it is. And let's be clear, they're French bulldogs. What are they going to do, lick somebody to death? Like, it's not like we've got, Dobermans and Shepherds and, all kinds of guard dogs going around. But people, and there's data to support this, by the way, people feel safer, specifically women, when there's an animal either in the room or in the bed.
Makes sense.
Right. So, like, if you like to sleep with your animal, I don't think I care. Now, to be fair, if it's a Great Dane, it might be problematic. You might need a double king-size bed or something like that. But as long as you've got space and are not disrupted, I think that can be okay. A biggest factor, though, I think that goes on in environment is temperature.
Yeah.
Right? Temperature seems to be the big one. I got to be honest with you, dude. I've saved more marriages as a sleep doctor than I ever would have as a marital therapist dealing with temperature issues and snoring issues for couples in sleep. Temperature is key. Remember, sleep follows the core body temperature cycle. So as your temperature waxes and wanes, you're going to feel better or worse when it comes to sleep, and you're going to get deeper or worse sleep. So the ambient temperature turns out to be important in the room, but there's a microclimate under the covers.
Sure, absolutely.
Right?
That's the issue for most people.
And that's the issue for most people, exactly. And so what ends up happening is also people don't really think a lot about the materials that are surrounding them. If you're lying in a memory foam bed, newsflash, you are going to insulate yourself and you are just going to get hotter and hotter and hotter. And I'm not talking sexy hot. I'm talking heat hot, right?
Yeah.
Your body gets hot because you get depressed inside the foam and there's no place for the heat to escape. Right? So you become insulated and now your body just heats up and heats up. And we know that your core body temperature has to drop for melatonin production. So being hot in the temperature
Why are those beds
sense,
so popular then?
So it's very, very interesting. I think what happens is the memory foam types of beds are popular. And by the way, I had one for years. What's great about them is they form to your body and they create a level of support and comfort that's really, really good. Here's the big issue is America's getting fat, right? Like we're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so when you take a larger weighted person and you stick them on one of these, the depression is significantly more. So when you're a big person, it's probably not a great idea to have a solid memory foam bed. Number one, it's hard to get out of it, right? But now they make hybrid beds. So there's springs on the bottom with memory foam on the top. I recommend those for my larger patients all the time because it makes more sense for them. It's easier for them to get in and out of it. And again, this is not fat shaming. Like we're not talking about that. We're talking about these are the logistics of how to get a good night's sleep in your environment because I believe that equipment matters, right? So I'm a runner, right? And when I go for a run, I can run a race in my flip-flops with my boombox on my arm, but my time's not going to be too good, right? But if I've got my Asics on and my dry fit wear and I'm listening to some good tunes, I can drill off a few miles and be happy with it. Equipment matters for performance.
Right.
And sleep's a performance activity. I don't care what anybody says.
So when you say equipment, you mean your pillow, your bed,
mattress, sheets, pajamas, keeping the temperature cool. Again, what works for you, right? So for my wife, what works is having the television on and 2 dogs in the bed. So guess what? After 26 years of marriage, I've adapted.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what happens sometimes, right? But you can see me like I get pretty good sleep. I also want to be clear. There are nights where we don't sleep together because I have something big the next day and I want to make doggone sure I'm going to get a great night's sleep. A lot of people don't understand that the strength of your relationship has nothing to do with the location in which you sleep. A lot of people would say to me, like, I can't go to bed at a different time than my partner, or I can't sleep in another room than my partner because I'm concerned that it will affect our relationship. When you dig into that a little bit longer and you say, well, what aspects of your relationship would it dig into? Intimacy usually comes up first. Right? They're like, we're not going to be intimate anymore. It's going to crater our marriage. We're going to get divorced. Here's what I'll tell you: when people don't sleep in the same bed on the regular, they have more sex, not less.
Really interesting.
Because it's more planned.
Yeah.
Right. And they're like, hey, I'm going to be in the bedroom this weekend. Right? Yeah, let's go. I've been ready for it. So like you actually have more fun with it when you start to again adapt and understand. So sometimes your environment might need to be a different room.
So interesting. I remember old sitcoms where the husband and wife would be in 2 separate beds.
Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz.
Yes,
remember that?
Next to each other, 2 different beds.
Absolutely.
You're right. I love Lucy.
Yeah, exactly.
They knew what they were doing back then.
I think they kind of did, right? It's kind of interesting. But as we get closer and closer, sometimes that can be disruptive, right? Now, again, to be clear, for some people, it works great. Yeah. Right? I mean, there are cultures out there where a family bed is everybody's in the bed. It's not my favorite, but that's what it does.
Right. So back to temperature. I think one of the problems with relationships and sleeping with a significant other is the temperature differences that people need to have, right? And
yes, indeed.
There are devices. I have the 8 Sleep in my home, which I love, that you can modify your own temperature on your side of your bed.
Absolutely.
How do you feel about those kind of things?
So I'll tell you. So number one, I've had the opportunity to play around with the 8 Sleep. There's also one called a Chili Pad.
Yeah.
There's a few of them out there. So I want to be product agnostic,
device agnostic,
right?
sure.
Just let's talk about temperature and sleep. So here's what I'll tell you is it definitely works. Like there's definitely something to it, but you have to be somewhat thoughtful in understanding what's going on. So like as an example, I have a client who said to me, he said, I want to start taking my temperature regulation device with me when I travel. Because he said, because when I travel, I sleep better when it's a cooler environment.
Sure.
Right? And I was like, that kind of makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But are you going to lug around a $4,000 piece of equipment that's big and it's an overlay on your bed and things like that, right? It's almost impossible to do. So I have created something new, and it costs almost nothing. So what people should do is you take a plastic bottle of water, right? Take 2 of them, and at whatever hotel or resort that you're staying at, ask them to freeze them. And then bring a tube sock, like those old athletic socks, drop it in there because there'll be some condensation, but one on one hip and one on the other hip.
Really? So
It's like your own personal air conditioning, brother.
That's great. I love that idea.
So what I tell people to do is do this first before you go out and spend the money on one of these devices. And I want to be clear, these devices are pretty interesting. I like some of the things that they do. I do think that they're a little bit too expensive, but on the general, I think these can be very helpful, and I think they can do some really cool stuff. But try this method first of the 2 frozen water bottles on either hip to see if that is helpful before you go out and do all of this other stuff.
Yeah, no, I love that. The other thing that we talk about with sleep environment, the talk track I always use with my patients is your bedroom like a cold, dark cave? Because that's what our ancestors slept in, right?
Sure.
And so I think the darkness is incredibly important.
So here's what I can tell you is darkness depends on people, right? So as an example, my wife sleeps with the television on all night long. It doesn't seem to bother her at all, right? I wear an eye mask.
Yeah.
So that it doesn't bother me, right? So light can have interesting, associations with people. Also, the amount of light that you get during the day determines how light changes for you circadian-wise at night. So, for example, if you have a lot of light exposure during the daytime, people say like, oh, should I wear my blue light blocking glasses at night?
That's my next question.
I know. Yeah. So here's what I'll tell you. I used to sell blue light blocking glasses.
Yeah.
I looked into this. Like I had the right lenses, the right frames. I looked at all the data. Here's what I'll tell you. You might have a 1% difference by using them. This is not going to move the needle for you in a big, big way unless putting on your blue light blocking glasses then starts your habit of going to sleep and following a ritual or routine. Now, if that's what you do, if that's your method of turning on your sleep superpower is the second you put on these glasses, now you're doing your thing, I freaking love that.
Right.
I think that's fantastic. But I want to be super duper clear. Walking around with blue light blocking glasses on from 6 o'clock in the evening until you fall asleep, it's going to help some, but it's really not going to be, it's not going to be the big difference maker. Much bigger difference maker, wake up at the same time every single day. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Not even a comparison.
That's great advice. You see people wearing there's some biohackers, it seems like they wear them all day long.
Look, let's talk. Like Dave Asprey's got the yellow glasses during the day. He's got the true dark at night. Now, let me tell you about his glasses because he and I have talked so many times about him. I love his glasses. His true dark evening glasses, oh my God, those things you can't see anything. I actually have a pair of those that I like to wear internationally. Like when we go to Barcelona, you might see me have those on the plane because it blocks it all out. And it's fantastic. Yeah. So I like them when you're in a situation where there's a lot of light around and you need to block it all out, true dark, they will do it for you. I don't know how much lift you really get from wearing them during the day. We'd have to ask Dave what energetically he seems to feel. But I have never really experienced anything of using them during the day to have any real effectiveness.
And I'm sure it's super individual as well, right? I mean, I think it's one of those N of 1 experiments that you can do. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, you tried it, it didn't work. You can, give them to your buddy of yours or something, right?
Now, what I will tell you is if you try them and they don't work for you, it's probably not the worst idea to give them to your kid.
That's a good idea too.
Right, because kids have a lot more blue light exposure because they're on video games and, their phones and YouTube and things like that. So what I would say is if you want to give it a shot, give it a shot. If it doesn't really work for you, toss them to your kids and say, hey, if you want to play video games, you got to wear these.
Got it. Another kind of on the lighting topic is a red light at night, right? Tell me about that a little bit.
So here's what I can tell you. There's not great data.
Yeah.
Okay. I can tell you that when it's red light at night, it means there's no blue light.
That's true.
That is a bonus.
That's helpful, right?
Right. But does red light itself
Yes.
do anything to propagate or promote sleep? I've not seen any convincing data on that.
Got it.
But again, the lack of blue light can be helpful.
Yes.
So like as an example, I had a patient. So this is kind of a funny story. So I had a patient who came to me. And his sleep was all messed up. I called him the exhausted executive, right? 45
I know
years
a lot
old.
Of those.
I know, right?
I'm one of those sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes me too. 45 years old. We did a sleep study on him. He's negative for sleep disorders. We ran blood work on him. He was low on iron. A couple of things that we could kind of fix and start to make him feel a little bit better. And when I was going through his nightly routine, he said, "Oh, I got the best night routine ever." I'm like, "What is that?" He says, "I watch Star Wars every night." Right? So I'm thinking, okay, like how bad could that be? He had a private theater room. Okay, theater room, right? So it's like a movie screen, and he had all of the Star Wars, and he would he would be bathing in blue light. Like he would go into this theater room, like his kids are asleep, his wife thought he was a nut bar, right? And he's watching Luke Skywalker and falling asleep to it every night, right? And so I was like, you need blue light blocking glasses. But most people probably not.
No, that makes total sense. And I think the other thing that's been helpful for me personally with the light is my bulbs in the bedroom. We had them change from white to yellow.
Yeah, great idea.
Massive improvement. And then we did this for the whole house. So at nighttime, the house just turns the yellowish color of light instead.
Absolutely. Believe it or not, there are now circadian lighting systems.
Right. Like
so you
Tetra is one, I think.
I think so, yeah. So you can actually come in, they can change your lights, change your bulbs, things like that. If you don't want to go cuckoo crazy, because those are kind of expensive,
right.
There's two things you can do. Switch to yellow or lower the wattage.
Right.
So what I tell people is put 40-watt bulbs in your bedside table lamps. If you can find lower wattage, the lowest wattage you can get. Now, if you read before bed, you don't want low watt light, but what you do want is a book light.
Right.
Right. Because you don't want 100 watts blowing you out here while you're trying to read. But if you've got enough watts on your book, on the page, your eyes will be able to adjust and see that without getting all that blue light exposure.
Yeah, I use a book light at night. It works
great. I love the itty bitty book light or whatever it's called.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah. And then last point on light is using an iPad or a phone at night.
Yep. Let's talk.
What's that?
Let's talk about it.
Yeah, let's talk about that. And then also, the phones also have like the night shift mode.
Yep.
And is that any better?
I know all about it.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it. So the University of Rochester did the study looking at the night shift on the iPhone.
Yes.
It does not work.
There you
Period.
go.
Full
Right.
stop. It doesn't change melatonin production whatsoever, okay? It just doesn't do you any good. But I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think that light is the biggest issue that's coming from an iPad or from your phone. I think it's engagement.
Stimulation and engagement.
Yep.
Absolutely.
If you're trying to get your high score on Candy Crush, you ain't trying to go to bed,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Or even the switching in social media from one video about one topic to another video about another topic. And is all that mental switching.
Well, also, I know a lot of people for TikTok, right? So people have seen my videos on TikTok. I'm on there all the time. But I also enjoy, I watch it and things like that. But what I've discovered is it's super addictive. You lose track of time like this.
Absolutely.
And when you start to think about it, it feels very dopaminergic.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
It's like, oh, that looks cool. Oh, I'm bored. Oh, that looks cool. Oh, I'm bored. You're going to exhaust your brain. Here's what ends up happening. If you start scrolling before bed, here's what I think honestly happens is you get these dopamine hit, and then you start to burn out. And now your body stays elevated.
Right.
Right? And so this isn't what we need runway to land the plane.
Yes.
Right? And so for me, runway is meditation, relaxation, breath work, prayer, reading, something to slow your roll. Because here's the object of the game. Most people don't know this. In order to enter in a state of unconsciousness, you need a heart rate of 60 or below. Right? If you're doing all these other things, your heart rate ain't at 60. Right? So you've got to do things to slow yourself down, and you've got to give yourself the opportunity to relax and sleep. You have to recover in order to get to your recovery.
It makes total sense. Yeah. So the overarching theme there is, like you said, the runway.
Yeah.
You have to 20, 30 minutes, 40 minutes before, just start landing the plane.
Yeah. And so I broke that up. I created this thing called a power down hour.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Right.
What is that?
So if you went to bed at 10, I would say it's starting at 9, chop that last hour up into 3 20-minute segments. 20 minutes for just stuff you got to do. 20 minutes for hygiene, and then 20 minutes for some form of meditation, relaxation, prayer, something like that. You can shorten the whole thing into 30 minutes, but you don't do 10, 10, 10. You want to have a minimum of 15 to 20 minutes of meditation, relaxation, something that is lowering your heart rate. You might only spend 5 minutes doing hygiene and 5 minutes doing the few things you got to do. Like in our house, we were getting backpacks together, finding shoes, sports equipment, for kids, because nobody likes the morning time when, where's my lacrosse ball? And, all this other stuff. And so that's what we would do in the beginning. Then we would all, brush your teeth, wash your face, all that stuff. And then if it's your chronotypical bedtime, you go to bed.
Yeah, well, I love that. Let's talk about the last aspect of this, which is noise.
Yes.
Obviously, it's hard to sleep when it's not quiet.
Yeah.
There's some ways to mitigate that.
Yeah.
One of them being like put some earplugs in your ear.
Yeah. Well,
right?
Here's the weird thing. The most annoying noise, snoring.
Yes. And so that's what I was getting to. How do you mitigate the effects of yourself snoring and your partner snoring?
So this is a bigger topic, but there's a lot of different things to think about. So if we wanted to actually reduce snoring, that's one topic. Or do we want to deal with a snoring bed partner? That's another topic. Okay?
Yeah.
So we'll deal with the snoring bed partner first, and then we'll get to how do you actually reduce the snoring. So dealing with the snoring bed partner. So here's what I'll tell you. It's annoying, right? And people get pissed. I've saved more marriages, as I've said, as a sleep doctor than I ever would have as a marital therapist. And snoring is a big part of that. Yeah. One of the reframes that I do, remember, I'm a clinical psychologist, so I like to reframe things, is I remind people that if you can hear them, they're alive. Yeah. That sometimes really sinks into people. They're like, wait a second. Oh, I can hear him breathing, like he's not snoring all the time. I can hear, now I feel safe. Yeah. Now it's okay. Is it annoying? Yes, of course it's annoying. I get that. But let's get past the annoying part, because let's be fair. Everybody's fallen asleep in loud environments before, right? Have you ever fallen asleep in a car, on a bus, in an airport, on an airplane, right? We're talking about very loud environments, much louder than your bed partner's snoring. So there's an emotional component to what you're listening to. Right. That's what has to be changed. Right. So instead of this emotional component of being annoyed, you want to feel love. You want to say, oh, that's the person that I care about, and I know that they're alive. Yes. They're annoying the shit out of me right now, but I care about them and I know they're alive. And when you start to reframe that, you start to forgive them. Because, by the way, it's not 100% their fault. Yeah. Now let's fix the snoring, okay? So you want to fix the snoring? Number one, weight loss. I don't care what anybody says. If you lose between 5 and 10% of your body weight, your snoring goes down between 30 and 40 decibels. Yeah. That's a lot.
That's huge.
Okay?
Right?
And 10% of a 200-pound person is 20 pounds, right? Even 5%, we're talking 10 pounds. We're not talking about acres and acres of weight to lose here. Right. But if you don't lose weight, you're going to continue to snore. Let me explain. So you ever been in the garden, right? And you're watering the plants, right? When you stick your thumb over the hose, the water squirts out faster, right? So in this analogy, your nose is the hose, right? So your nose goes up and down in the back. So anytime that your nose gets narrow, air moves faster. Right?
Makes total sense.
When air moves faster, it causes a vibration, which causes a cadence, which causes a snore, right? So we got to do something to open the pipe, right? So the air doesn't have to move so fast, right? So the number 2 thing, congestion, right? So lose some weight, check out your nose, okay? Right. If you've got any level of nasal congestion, any level of sinus infection, any particulates that are flying around up there that are causing any kind of inflammation, guess what? You've just narrowed your pipe. Right? So you got to deal with the congestion. Now, one of the things I tell people, and this is interesting, and you can only do it for one night, is if you want to find out if nasal congestion is the primary focus of your snoring, use Afrin. For one night. You can't use it for long periods of time because your tissue, gets addicted to it. But if you use it for one night and it's a silent night, now we know where to go. Yeah. Right? And so then we could focus on that. Another thing that is important to understand is snoring actually occurs in 3 different places, in the nasopharynx, the oropharynx, or the hypopharynx, right? So there's all these different things that can come where the narrowing comes in. Sure. So that's the other thing that we have to start to think about. So as an example, if you got a really thick neck, right? Crazy statistic. Any male who has over a 17.5-inch neck has an 82% chance of having obstructive sleep apnea. Wow. It's like the largest physical marker
That's
there
one
is.
of the questions of the Stop Bang questionnaire, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's how big is your neck?
How big is your neck?
Right. So weight loss is going to be helpful. Decongesting is going to be helpful, right? Then also position has something to do with it. When you're lying on your back, right, gravity throws stuff to the back of your throat, which narrows your throat. roll to the side. You will not snore nearly as much. And to be fair, your bed partner's probably already given you the elbow and asked you to roll to your side anyway in order to do something like this. There are also snore guards, right? So mouth guards, which slowly pull your jaw, lower part of your jaw forward to open up your posterior airway space. Again, opening up the pipe. Yeah. That can be helpful. And there are surgeries out there that people can do. I mean, if I'm being honest, I don't love the snoring surgeries. I get it and why people do it. I think that if you're at the point where you have you're requiring a snoring surgery, you probably have several other physical things that are going on, and we really need to check you for sleep apnea. Yeah. And I think that's the big underlying thing is if you've got somebody next to you snores, and by the way, 1 out of 2 people do, just listen for a half a second and see if they stop breathing one time. Yeah. If they stop breathing once, it's happening.
It's sleep apnea.
For sure.
For sure. Yeah.
For sure.
On the snoring piece, a couple of things I want to add to that is I once in a while will notice a patient's nose is off and they have an obstruction from a previous broken nose.
Yeah, well, deviated septums all over the place.
Right, exactly. And seeing an ENT doctor at that point in time and getting your nose fixed can be very helpful. I've seen people get help with that.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And then some people have their nasal valves collapsing.
Absolutely. So and you'll see that and you'll see that when people's nostril kind of caves in.
Exactly.
And so if you raise your head up like this and you breathe into in front of the mirror, you'll see when it collapses. Yes. That's what we're talking about there. So I just saw this new thing. I don't know how good it is, but it looks like a Breathe Right strip, but it's got 2 pieces of metal in it, and then it's got a arc piece of metal that you put on top, and
pulls it open.
Pulls it open. Yeah. Right. So I think that would certainly be better than a Breathe Right strip. There are also these things called Mute, M-U-T-E, and there's internal nasal dilators. So it's like a small stent that you put up in here. About 30 seconds, you don't feel it. I actually use it when I exercise, and I get more air in when I exercise.
Interesting.
Oh yeah.
Okay. I haven't seen these.
It's pretty cool. Now, if you're sleeping next to a snoring, I'll bring you some. If you're sleeping next to a snoring bed partner, another big thing that you can do, create a pillow wall.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So people don't realize that sound is a matter wave. Right? And so if somebody's snoring at you, if you put a pillow in front of them, that sound wave will bounce back at them, and then they'll turn and face the other way. Sometimes that's all you need is somebody to just turn the other way. Yeah. So that's one thing. Earplugs, not a bad choice for some people, especially if you've got a snoring bed partner. But again, you're having to adapt to what's going on with them, and what's going on with them could actually be a medical situation. So please, 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 if you've got a snoring bed partner, let's figure out if they got sleep apnea or not. It's so easy to get tested now. It's literally $200 online.
Absolutely. You know, on this snoring, one last thing I'll add is there's a pillow called a Sleep Nora pillow. Have you seen this? And it detects snoring and it turns your head for you.
Yeah. So I think there are pros and cons to these types of things. One of the issues that I have with devices like that, when you put electronics inside a pillow.
Yeah, it's right by your head.
Yeah. So like you got the leaky radiation because it's got to have a battery, or it's got to have some kind of hookup in it. So I don't know what kind of radiation is going on.
Sure.
And you're literally putting your head on it every night. I mean, if you're asking me, should you do something like a pillow-related technology or lose some weight? I'm saying lose some weight.
Absolutely, yeah. Have you seen the app Snore Lab?
I have.
Yeah, what do you think about that?
So I think there are pros and cons. I think the technology is getting better and better. I think what we're going to start to see over time is there will be a scenario where I would say in the next 5 years where you will be able to take a recording of your snoring, send it to your doctor, and get a full diagnostic workup. Yeah. That would not surprise me if that technology would be able to get to that point. I don't think we're there yet. I do think that Snore Lab is doing a good job because one of the things that they do is they listen, and they just basically listen for pauses, and then they let you know, hey, this could be going on. No different than your bed partner could.
Yeah. Exactly.
But to be fair, I think it's a good tool, and if it's something that you utilize and it helps you find diagnostic relief, absolutely go for it.
Yeah, I think what's really important about sleep apnea too is the relationship to chronic disease, obesity, diabetes,
the list goes on
syndrome,
and on.
Alzheimer's, stroke. So you got to get it treated.
AFib, like it just goes on and on and on.
Right. If you have sleep apnea, you have to treat it. And you know, you and I talked about this a little bit earlier, but now GLP-1s are becoming a mainstay of treatment of sleep apnea. So let's talk about that. Yeah.
So we just saw the very first FDA approved for Mounjaro. It's now called Zepbound.
Zepbound, right?
And it is FDA approved for sleep apnea. It's the first time we've ever seen a GLP-1, being now allowed to be used to treat sleep apnea. So let's break this down a little bit and think
And
this
when
through.
it gets FDA approved, does that mean insurance will cover it for sleep apnea?
Yes, it does.
There you go.
And here's what else it means. Medicare will cover a GLP-1 for sleep apnea.
Well, that's huge.
That becomes massive within that universe, right? Now, is that really what's going to happen? And how is look, I don't know what's going to be happening with Medicare and Medicaid services moving forward. The good news is that whether you're a fan of the administration or not, there's somebody who may be codified and be in charge of it, who really knows his stuff. His name is Mehmet Oz. He's a good friend of mine. And if he gets in charge of Medicare and Medicaid services, I think some really good stuff is going to happen.
I just talked to him yesterday.
Did you? Yeah. So I was talking to him earlier. So at the end of the day, there's a lot of interesting things that are going on in that universe. But let's, again, double tap on GLP-1s. When we start to look at GLP-1s, is that the substitute for CPAP? That's the question that I'm getting.
That's a great question, right? Because
people
hate sleep apnea.
Right, of course they do, right? Who wants to sleep with a mask?
But I will tell you, a lot of people, once they get it and they start using it, they say they can't live without it, and they love it. So I think they hate the idea of it, and then a lot of people, once they get it, they actually love it.
So I think that's exactly right. Here's what I would tell you is the compliance rate. Initial compliance is low. It's 30, 40%. Right. But once you move past the first 3 months and people really start to see the benefit, then people are locked and loaded on their CPAPs. I'll also tell you that the more severe your disease is, the better CPAP works and the more tolerable it will be because, well, I shouldn't say the better it works because it works actually whatever severity of disease that you have, but it's more tolerable because when you've got really severe sleep apnea, you feel like shit.
Yeah,
and when you stick on a CPAP mask, you feel significantly better. Yeah. But when you have mild sleep apnea, you don't feel that bad, right? And so you're not feeling that big rise in benefit as people do for severe ones. So could GLP-1s be something that helps somebody with mild sleep apnea? Yeah. I think so. I mean, look, as far as weight loss is part of sleep apnea, and to be clear, weight loss isn't the only thing that moderates and modulates sleep apnea, right? I mean, there's all kinds of aspects of your body. Weight is one factor. So if weight is the factor that is intensifying the severity of your sleep apnea, then I think a GLP-1 might make a lot of sense. But what I don't want people to do is I don't want people to say, CPAP into the closet, I'm going to go online and I'm going to get a GLP-1 and that's how I'm going to fix my apnea. Because I don't know if that would really happen.
Right. No, I think it's part of it's an exciting new part of a protocol to treat sleep apnea.
Yeah. Well, and also I think you and I were talking before about microdosing GLP-1s.
Yes.
This feels like a situation where microdosing GLP-1s could be effective as well.
So let me ask you on that topic. If someone is not overweight and they use a GLP-1, will that still positively affect their sleep apnea?
That's a great question. I don't think anybody knows.
Right. I think that'd be an amazing study for someone to do, right?
Yeah,
because
it'd be super interesting.
There's quite a lot of people that are not overweight that have sleep apnea.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Probably between 15 and 20% of the people who have sleep apnea are fairly lean, a BMI below 24, 23, something like that.
Maybe you and I are next sleep apnea patient that's not overweight. We give it a try and see if it helps.
I don't see any reason why we don't. I mean, I think it could be super duper interesting for folks. But I also, here's what I would say is another thing that I think a GLP-1 could do is they could make CPAP more tolerable. Right? So if you lose 15 pounds, we can lower that CPAP pressure.
Right, I see what you're saying.
Right? Then it becomes more tolerable. Then you're okay. Because remember, for GLP-1s, you got to be on them for extended periods of time.
Yeah.
Right? And so that can be costly and that can be difficult. And there's a whole host of, and by the way, not all GLP-1s work on everybody and GLP-1s have side effects and there are people who don't lose weight. And so there's a lot to this, but I think we're at a very exciting time right now because we've got at least one group that is now noticed, hey, we've got a relationship between obesity and obstructive sleep apnea, and we now have an indication to be able to use a GLP-1 to do that. I think that's pretty cool.
That's really cool. And we're going to find out a lot more. I mean, sleep apnea is such a huge underappreciated problem.
Right.
And people are suffering with it just day to day because they're feeling tired.
And they don't know.
Right. And they get narcolepsy from sleep apnea. They don't know what it is. And then I also think just the level of chronic disease that comes from sleep apnea is massive.
So think about it like this, chronic disease feeds on the feeble body, right? So when your body is not humming and gunning and when your body is not at, 80%, 90%, 100%, that's when chronic disease loves to come through the door, settle in, and then really make your life terrible, right? And so what we have to do is we have to start thinking, how is sleep apnea putting people into that compromised scenario?
Yeah.
Because I think that's what's going on. Like when you don't have enough air going through your system doesn't work as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Makes
that's
total
problematic.
sense. Makes total sense. So on that topic, we can move on to breathe, because I feel like we've talked a lot about breathing already.
Yeah.
But there's a few more aspects here we could talk about.
Sure.
And I'd love to be really complete here, because I feel like, you've done an incredible job in your book writing about this. But the way we breathe has changed a lot in the last 100 years or so, right?
Thankfully.
And what are the reasons for that?
I think it's partially education. I think people are starting to learn. And let's be clear, there are people who've been doing breath work for thousands of years, right? Like, like the yogis and the people of the world who've figured this out long before, any of us, people are like, oh, let's do breath work, right? So this has been around for a long period of time. But one of the things that we have to understand is like breathing sets the pace for your body, right? So when you breathe heavy, right? When you breathe deep, your heart rate gets to slow down. When you breathe shallow, your heart rate speeds up, right? And so breathing really is the pace setter for your body. And it's different based on emotion. It's different based on your age. It's different based on your physicality, all of these different things. If I had just learned breath work when I was getting my PhD in clinical psychology, do you know how many more people I could have helped on the anxiety side of things?
For sure, right.
Because I was taught cognitive behavioral therapy. Don't get me wrong. I love cognitive behavioral therapy, and I use it with my sleep patients daily. But I've now incorporated breath work and breathing. And so let me break down what do I mean by breath work and breathing, right? So as an example, my favorite technique for patients who wake up in the middle of the night and cannot return to sleep, which, by the way, is the number one question that I get asked, I have them do 4-7-8 breathing. Okay, so let me describe for the audience what it is, since I know you already know. 4-7-8 breathing was developed by Dr. Andrew Weil, and he developed it for the Navy SEALs. And so the goal was to slow people's heart rate down so they could fire in between the bullets. I mean, between the heartbeats, rather. Right? So great story, very interesting, blah, blah, blah. I decided to look at that, and what I discovered was 4-7-8 breathing dumps your heart rate to about 60. Remember that statistic I gave you earlier?
Absolutely.
You need 60 to get into a state of unconsciousness. I'm on. So here's what I do is when you wake up in the middle of the night, one of the things I ask you to do is to consider using 4-7-8 breathing. Now, here's why it's so good is you breathe in for a count of 4, you hold for a count of 7, you push out for a count of 8. And to be clear, these aren't strong pushes. These are very gentle, very relaxed type of situation. But after 12 cycles, it dumps your heart rate to 60. So that's progress, number one. Number two, you have to count while you do it.
Yeah.
Okay? And you know what that stops? Monkey mind. Right? The biggest problem I hear from people in the middle of the night is, holy shit, I can't turn off my brain, Michael. I start thinking about my kid, or I start thinking about my work, or I start thinking about something else. And zzz, and now there's no universe where I'm falling back asleep. But with 4-7-8 breathing, you're distracted by the counting. And when doing the breath work, you're lowering your heart rate. So this is a double hack that works really, really well in the middle of the night.
Right. It could also help probably getting to sleep as well, right?
Absolutely. It helps getting to sleep. And by the way, depending upon the number of cycles that you do, you can use it during the day. So for example, like right before I go on stage, like remember a couple of years ago I was on Unleash the Power with Tony Robbins, right? Right before 12,000 people in the audience. Big show, right? Big stage. I did 4-7-8 breathing for about 5 or 6 cycles before I got on stage to just pull me down a notch, right, and allow me to focus and allow me to go. So this breathing can be useful in so many different areas. I mean, for sure, for life, but generally speaking, for sleep, I think there's a lot of different ways we can breathe. Now, one thing that we haven't talked about yet is nose breathing versus mouth breathing.
Yes, absolutely. But before we go on to that, I just wanted to say one real quick thing.
Please.
So one of the mechanisms I don't think people fully appreciate is the way breath work affects our physiology, and it's through the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, right? And so what you're talking about, the 4-7-8 breathing makes your parasympathetic tone increase over your sympathetic tone.
Correct.
And then if you want to do the opposite, which is say you want to be more on point and energized, then you use something like the fire breath or the Wim Hof type of breathing.
Absolutely.
Right? Which
or
is
Kundalini,
shallower,
anything like that. Yeah.
Shallow and fast breathing brings you up in a more sympathetic tone.
Right. So whatever what Dr. Shah is talking about is we have this thing called our autonomic nervous system in our body, and it branches out into sympathetic and parasympathetic. Now, I always get confused, so I think of sympathetic as like, you know that Rolling Stones song, Sympathy for the Devil, right? Like I'm running from the devil. So I think that sympathetic is that, you know, fight or flight, and then parasympathetic is that rest and digest. And you can turn either one of these on just by breathing in a particular way. That's what's so cool.
And it's super powerful.
Yeah.
And one of the mechanisms is you have the vagus nerve that runs from your head down through your chest, and the breath work is stimulating that in a certain rate. But there's many other reasons that it works. The diaphragm, the movement of the diaphragm. And so it's a very powerful technique because our sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system is been part of the evolution of not just humans, but almost every single animal since the beginning of the development of the brain.
Right.
And so it's very fundamentally ingrained in our brain pathways and our neural pathways for this to work. And we've lost kind of the appreciation, I think, in modern times of breath work being such a powerful technique. I mean, I grew up in a household, an Indian household where Ayurveda, and like you were saying, like yogic breathing.
It's been around for thousands of years.
Been around for thousands of years. This was, this was a true treatment modality because we did not have drugs and all these other things in the past.
And by the way, it works.
It works, absolutely. So I'm glad you allowed me to double click on that a little bit.
No, let's talk sleep, drink, breathe. Like this is important shit.
It is. It is. Let's talk about nose versus mouth breathing.
For sure.
And then maybe we can talk a little bit about mouth taping too.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So when we're looking at nose versus mouth breathing, right? The way I think about it is like when you're breathing through your mouth, it's like putting leaded gas in your car. Right? There's no filter. There's no, obfuscation of any particulates. Like everything that's in the air is going in your lungs.
Sure.
Breathing through your nose, actually, believe it or not, you get more air. That's something that most people don't realize.
I would not think that, right?
But you actually get more air, number one. And you've got cilia, you've got mucus, you've got turbinates. All of these things moisten the air, warm the air, and filter the air so that you're getting clean gas or clean fuel. Because to be clear, oxygen is fuel for your body. Like that is what is going on here. Like people are like, oh, I ate a good meal. Brother, if you ain't breathing, nothing's going to happen to that meal. We need that meal. We need oxygen to make that meal, do something for us. So understanding the importance of that level of breath work and things like that, I think becomes really critical and essential.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I think there's a movement now to talk about why we should be nasal breathing over mouth breathing.
And mouth tape.
And mouth tape, right. So let's talk about mouth tape. How do you use mouth tape? How do you recommend people use it?
Okay, so I'm kind of in the middle on mouth tape, if I'm being honest, which I always am with you. So at the end of the day, mouth tape can be dangerous, and I want to talk about that part first.
Please.
So there are a tremendous number of people who have not been diagnosed with sleep apnea and have undiagnosed sleep apnea. And if they tape their mouths, they will never figure out if they have it.
Right.
And it's much easier to tape your mouth shut than it is to go get a sleep study done. So my big warning is to every patient I have who uses mouth tape, I say do a sleep study first, and let's make sure that it's okay to do it.
Yeah,
because,
makes total sense.
Right, if you got apnea, I want to treat your apnea first. Now, let's say you do the study and you don't have apnea. Okay, Michael, should I tape my mouth shut? There's a couple of different things I think about this, and I think it might be okay, but there's a couple of methods that you need to think about first. So number one, it's never horizontal. It's only vertical, okay? Number two, don't use any other tape than micropore tape or surgical tape, which is specifically designed to not rip your lips off, right? I can't count the number of people. Like people actually use Scotch tape, masking tape, duct tape, electrical tape. Like it's unbelievable what people are doing out there. Also, by the way, if you have undiagnosed sleep apnea and you tape your mouth shut and you have an apneic event, guess what happens? You open your mouth, you literally rip almost all the skin off of your lips. And by the way, that's painful. That's really painful. So I would say mouth tape is something that you can use vertically. You need to use the right kind of tape. Also, I'm going to say one thing that I just have a hard time with it. There are companies out there that have weird names for these mouth tapes. There's one out there that's called Hostage, and I think that's disgusting.
Yeah.
We have hostages still being held, and somebody out there thinks that mouth tape should be called hostage. I think that is the worst taste I've ever seen.
Oh my gosh. So micropore tape, this is standard medical tape you can find on Amazon
CVS,
or CVS.
Dwayne Reed, wherever.
It doesn't need to be these expensive brands of mouth tape, right? Exactly.
No, of course not.
And if you don't have sleep apnea, but you're snoring, is it okay to wear mouth tape?
Yeah, I think it is.
Okay.
I think it is. But also don't forget, there's other ways to fix snoring, right? So look at your congestion.
Yeah,
because remember something, when you tape your mouth shut, if you still got congestion, you ain't getting a whole lot of air.
Right. And that's the issue. Like, I think a lot of people have tried mouth tape, but they feel like they can't breathe.
Well, they feel suffocated.
They feel suffocated, right? And that's because their nasal passageway is not open.
Yeah, exactly. Right? And by the way, there are a lot of easy ways you can fix your nasal passages without having to use chemicals and things like that. A simple saline wash, a neti pot. There's this cool thing called a navage, or I don't know I think that's what it's called, where it pushes water through your sinuses and comes out. Like, this is all stuff that you can do that can be very healthy for you. Clean this whole sinus area out. And by the way, it might take care of your snoring too.
Yeah. And also on the point of sinus congestion, one major reason for sinus congestion that's often ignored is poor gut health issues.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Food allergies, food sensitivities, gluten sensitivities. So those are some things to look at if you are having a lot of nasal congestion.
Well, and I think that's important for people to realize. Like, when you think about your nose, you don't think about your gut.
No, right.
Right? Absolutely. And you need to think about your gut.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Okay, great. So on the breath work point, other than at nighttime before going to bed, are there any breath work practices that you recommend?
Yeah, I like to do like fire breath in the morning when I wake up. It's a great way to wake yourself up in the morning.
Yeah.
So I have a routine that I call the 3:15s every single morning. And so what I do in the morning is I have a chair that actually sits outside, because I like to be outside in the morning if I can. It's nice when you're in Southern California, you have the opportunity to do that. Not everybody does. If you're listening here from New York and you can't have a chair outside, I get you. But don't worry, spring is coming, right? And so chair outside, 15 ounces of water, 15 deep breaths or whatever I want to do, and 15 minutes of sunshine, all at the same time.
Love it.
Okay. So there's a lot of science behind what I'm asking you to do. So number one, the 15 deep breaths or the fire breath or whatever you want to do, this wakes you up from a respiratory standpoint. It also brings you present and makes you focus. For folks out there who may not realize it, most of breath work is not used to make you calm down. Most of breath work is either bring you present or to bring you up, right?
Yeah.
In most ways, when you start to look across the depth of it. So I like people to do that. The second thing, hydrate, right? So we haven't talked much about drink yet.
That's next. So we're going to talk about that.
So here's the thing. People don't realize it, but sleep in and of itself is a dehydrative event.
Yes.
You lose almost a full liter of water just from the humidity in your breath every night. So I want you to hydrate before you caffeinate, because so many people are like, oh, where's the coffee?
Yeah.
Terrible idea. I'm not saying you can't have coffee. I'm not saying you can't have coffee, because people would kill me for that.
But you skip your hydration because it eliminates your thirst there.
Exactly, because the caffeine slows your appetite, which also slows your thirst, and therefore you don't drink nearly as much. So I try to get people to get that load in, and then the sunshine turns off the melatonin faucet in your head, right? So, and being outside is good.
Yeah.
Like, I like being in nature. Yeah. Like, it feels good. And I'll tell you one other kind of woo-woo thing that I do that's kind of stupid, but I like it. I keep my shoes off and I put my feet on the earth. Yeah. It's called grounding, right? There's not a lot of data on it, but you know what? It feels good, so I do it.
My morning routine is very similar to yours. I like the breath work in the morning too, because it obviates the need for too much coffee in the morning. And what I mean by that, I used to do like 3 or 4 cups in the morning.
Yeah.
Now I just do 1 cup, do the breath work. And
it literally is a substitute for caffeine. It really wakes you up.
And it works so well. And being outside first thing in the morning, and it's not just the sunlight. I think there's a lot of talk around exposing yourself to sunlight, but it's also just being in the outside environment.
Absolutely.
The air might be cooler.
Well, and there's data coming out about forest bathing and, being in nature and all the things that it does for you. Like, here's the other thing is, don't bring your phone.
Yeah.
Okay? Like, be quiet. Just be quiet and breathe and drink water for 15 minutes in the morning. It will change your life.
Absolutely. Biggest life hack I have is I move my phone charger to my closet.
Perfect. I love it.
I put it in there at nighttime. It creates 30, 40 minutes of separation from my phone before I go to bed.
Yep.
In the morning, I don't go to my closet until after I'm done with my morning routine. Then I go in there to dress. So it's another 30, 40 minutes in the morning without a phone.
So good for you,
it's
dude.
Such a massive.
So good for you.
We don't realize how much that cell phone in the last 20 years being on our person has really affected our health and our physiology, mental, physical, all of it.
I'll tell you how people can tell. Do what you do. Yeah. It drives my wife crazy. Like, sometimes she'll be like, I've been calling you. I'm like, oh, I left my phone. I actually don't know where I left my phone. Mm-hmm. Like, she's like, how do you not know where your phone is? Like, she can't be without her phone. Like, you need to be able to leave your phone in a room.
Right.
And be okay with it. you know,
especially during meals too.
especially during meals.
Yeah.
I think there's data to suggest that you don't digest as well, and I think there's some other things to show that like why do you need to look at YouTube while you're eating, you know, with your family? Like I just don't think you do.
Right. And I had Sean Stevenson on here yesterday, and
Oh, yeah.
he and I talked about just family connection and having your phone with you, even on your person or just definitely on the table as you're eating.
Right.
It just not only is it distracting for you, but it shows the people that you're eating with that you're distracted.
Yeah.
So it really needs to be in a different room. Sean does something awesome, which I'm going to do. He leaves his phone in the car when he goes into eat.
I know, but he goes, you know, he's a different human. Like he
Yeah.
does really, really cool, fun, extreme stuff. I'll tell you what I've done before that is interesting is if you're out with, you know, people is everybody stacks their phone and the first person who reaches for it pays the bill.
I love that. I love that. That's fantastic.
It works well.
Yeah, it does. Okay, so we talked about breathing.
Yep.
Let's talk about hydration.
Yes.
So why are we all so chronically dehydrated right now?
It's such a great question. If I had to guess, I think there's a few different factors. One of the factors I think is stress. I think because we're all sweating all the time, right? And the reason we're sweating all the time is because everything is moving too quick. Information is coming in too fast. We're getting anxious about so many things. So number one, I think as the universe, we are sweating more, which means we are losing more water. That's number one. Number two, people aren't in the habit of drinking.
Yeah.
They really aren't. And to be fair, I don't think they're drinking the right way. So let me explain. So I don't know if you've ever seen this. Like I'm at the gym every day. And when I'm at the gym, I'm going over to the water station to fill my water bottle up. And there's always somebody in front of me. And they've got their thing under there. They fill it about halfway. They pull it and they drink it. And then they put it back in. And they fill it up the rest. I'm the asshole who taps them on the shoulder. And I say, hey, sip, don't gulp. And they all tell me the exact same thing. They say, Michael, it's the only way I can get enough in me. And so my response is, it's not going in, it's going through.
Right.
So remember, when you wake up in the morning, your body is like a sponge, right? So, you know, when you walk out to the kitchen and there's that little sponge that's kind of shriveled up, and it's hard as a rock, and it's sitting on the sink, that's you, right? And if you open up the faucet full force, what happens? The water hits it, splashes, and doesn't absorb. But if you open up the faucet a little, so that's gulping. If you open up the faucet a little, like sipping, droplets hit, they slowly absorb, and now it expands, and now you have a useful tool.
It's a great analogy.
Sip, don't gulp.
Yeah, so
If
the
that's
rate
one
of
thing I could
consumption. The rate of consumption makes a big difference.
It does. It does. And that's why in that 15 minutes in the morning, I want you to complete the ounces. I don't want them completed in the first 3 minutes.
Right. That
Right?
makes total
Give
sense.
yourself some time. Like, why is everybody in such a rush?
They want to check it off their list, right?
Right. And so that's one of the big things that I learned about hydration was just how we're not hydrating. Then I started to look at, well, is our water safe? Right? Like what kind of water are we drinking?
Yeah.
Like, do we need filtered water all the time? Do we need unfiltered water? Like, what's going on?
Right.
So in the book, one of the things we do is we provide a website where you can punch your zip code in.
Yep.
And you can get a water report of exactly what's going on in your county and your area with your water. You know, you'll understand the minerals that are in it. You'll understand how much fluoride is in it. You'll understand what chemicals are in it. Right. And so people don't understand this, but the way we clean water is with chemicals.
Yes.
Right? And those chemicals leave residues in them. Doesn't matter how many times you filter them, it becomes part of it. And so that is something that you are ingesting. And by the way, that could be harmful. I'm not saying it is for everyone. I'm not saying everything out there is harmful, but there are people who definitely have reactions towards that. So what's the easy way to fix this? Go buy a Brita filter for $20.
Yeah.
I'm not, you don't have to have some triple osmosis, $10,000 system. You can if you want, and those are really cool. And I've been to some people's houses and they got some really cool water. But like, if you don't want to spend a boatload of dough, just go to Target and buy a Brita filter, or get on Amazon and buy a Brita filter and just drink water from that as your first step. Step number two is, if you can, buy better water, right? So what are the different waters, Michael? Well, first of all, distilled water. There's no nutritional value in distilled water whatsoever. Do not drink distilled water. Like there are people who are like, well, that's the cleanest. No, that's the worst kind.
Yeah.
That's what you put in your CPAP machine. That's what you put in your humidifier. That's what distilled water is really useful for.
And you use that for machines because it definitely has nothing in it. So it's not going to clog up the machine.
Exactly.
You don't use it to drink. You don't drink distilled water.
Right. So please don't drink distilled water. Okay, step number 2. Is there a difference between spring water and mineral water? You bet there is. So these are legal definitions. You are not allowed to put on your packaging that you are a spring water unless you actually have water derived from a natural spring. Mineral water, the water actually has to move through minerals and rocks, and it's tested to see if it has a mineral content to it.
Oh, interesting.
Right. So when you start looking, like when you go to the store and there's 50 waters, look for the mineral water. And by the way, look for the one in the glass bottle.
Yeah.
Because it's probably the best one and it's probably the healthiest one. It might be a little bit more on the pricey side. I like those mountain spring or the mountain mineral with the green bottles. That's my favorite one just because I know exactly what's in it every single time I drink it.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that becomes important as well.
And that mineral water, it's the minerals that you need, and there's no other contaminants in there?
Generally speaking, no.
Pretty healthy
And that's
one?
part of what they're trying to accomplish
Got
is
it.
they get it from the earth with the minerals that are on it. By the way, you can make your own mineral water. We
Right.
give you a recipe in the book.
Ah.
Take a little bit of lemon, a little bit of Himalayan salt, a couple other things, and you can actually create your own mineral water very easily on the cheap, if that's something you want to do.
What about those expensive powders that you can buy?
I was waiting for you to ask me about that one. So we call them hydration multipliers.
Yeah.
Right. So this is the LMNT, the liquid IV, the whatever. And to be clear, I'm agnostic. I don't care. We're just talking powder
Yes.
here. Here's the biggest problem. They're almost all salt.
Yeah.
Right. So when you look at
lot of
them,
salt in them.
there's like 1,000 milligrams of salt.
Sure.
Like people don't need 1,000 milligrams of salt. And here's the other issue is people have a tendency to use them too frequently.
Yeah.
So what I tell people is if you want to use a hydration multiplier, do it on a long day run. Right? Like if you have you run 5 miles during the week and you do a long run on the weekends, that's when you use your hydration multiplier. Right? You're going on a 3-hour hike, that's when you want to use a hydration multiplier. Right? Or you're taking a spin class and you haven't, and it's a hard one and they're going to kill you and you're going to sweat a lot, that's when you do it. But if you do that spin class every day, you do not do a hydration multiplier every day because you're just going to put way too much salt in the system.
Yes.
And then you throw your system, your hydration is really based on salt balance.
Right.
So you don't want to do that.
Yeah, I think that's a fair warning. I think too much salt becomes an issue as well.
And if you're hypertensive, it's probably not a good idea.
Yeah. It could definitely drive up hypertension, but also, obviously, we all need salt, and I think there's been a.
I'm not saying anything against salt.
Yeah, but I do think there's overusage of these because people put like 1 or 2 of them in every single.
That's a terrible idea.
Yeah, in every single bottle of water they're drinking,
That's a
like
terrible idea.
5, 6 of these a day. It's crazy.
Yeah, there'll be consequences for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll probably get kidney stones, right?
Right. So, okay. So, and also like what you drink your water out of is important. So glass bottles for the most part.
I kind of like that idea, but here's the truth of the matter is we're all completely exposed to microplastics.
Yeah, of course.
And we've all got them in us, and they're in every part of us. It would be great to lower the exposure rate, right? And so if you can have a glass,
Absolutely.
right? If you can have a metal container that you bring with you that you refill on the regular, I think that's probably the best way to go.
Yep.
If you possibly can. Now, I want to be clear. If the only thing you can drink water out of is a plastic bottle, please drink the water out of a plastic bottle.
Right. The other thing about plastic bottles and water from my research is when you heat up the plastic, then
it leaches.
It leaches into the bottle.
Yeah, and so here's the problem. You leave your bottle of water in your car while you're at the store. Now you have contaminated water.
Yeah, massively contaminated water. So you definitely don't want to do that and drink that bottle of water that was sitting around in your car for a long time.
Right.
Now, let's talk about hydration and sleep because I think it's a big topic too. Because some people, I was actually told this when I was a kid, was drink a big glass of water before you go to bed.
Pros and cons in either direction. Okay,
let's talk about this.
So here's one of the things. So I give people one of my hacks or rules is I call it the 3-2-1 rule. Stop alcohol 3 hours before bed. Stop food 2 hours before bed. Stop fluids 1 hour before bed. Okay. And let me explain why. In my patient population, I don't deal with kids mostly. I mean, I have before, but I'm not on the regular. We got guys waking up to pee. in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And so that becomes problematic. Now, sometimes that's enlarged prostate. Sometimes it's over fluid, things of like having too much fluid on board, things like that. And so what I'm trying to do is trying to figure out a balance. But what I've discovered in my research is the more water you can get earlier in the day, the better.
Exactly.
Right? And the easiest way to tell if you're hydrated is look at the color of your pee.
Right.
Right? If your pee is clear to light yellow, you're fine.
You're fine. Right?
You're fine. In fact, in India, you probably know this, they have color charts.
They do.
Right? Next to the urinals, so you can look and see if you're hydrated because the heat there is so different than the heat other places.
Yeah.
You get dehydrated, you don't even know it.
When they put those stickers in the bathrooms in India, it really helped reduce the rate of people going to the hospital from dehydration. You know?
Exactly.
So, because that's when you think about it, is when you're there.
100%. So what I'm telling people is have a water goal. Right? And then see if you can accomplish it with healthy, good water. So how do you figure out how much water you need? I'm going to make it super simple. Take your weight, multiply it by 0.6. That's how many ounces. Period. Done. Just
weight
do it.
in pounds times 0.6. That's how many ounces.
Yep.
Right? Okay.
Just make your life easy.
And I think sometimes people have said to me, well, if I'm not thirsty, that means my body is fine.
Wrong.
It's wrong, right?
Wrong.
Because we know our thirst systems get worse and worse as we age.
Not only that, our thirst systems get overridden by caffeine.
That is true as well.
Right? How many caffeinated beverages does a person have to have in a day to quench, to lower their thirst? Not many, right? And it happens. And so when you have 2 cups of coffee in the morning, you don't even think about hydrating until lunch.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So again, just thinking, we're talking about the basics, right? Sleep, drink, breathe, right? If everybody just gets back to the basics, we don't have to worry about blue light blocking glasses, and we don't have to worry about, crazy temperature. If you just do some basic stuff, you will be surprised at how well this unit will respond.
Yeah, no, it's such a key message, and I love it that you've put it so concisely into this book. This book is great because it's really an easy read for most people, right?
That's the goal. Yeah, this is not a heavy lift, right? I'm not getting you to do, Kundalini breathing here, right? Like what I'm here to, we talk about it in the book, but I give you a very simple plan. Within 3 weeks, I can have you sleeping better, well hydrated, and breathing to the point where you're actually seeing a benefit. 3 weeks. And you do something 3 or 4 times a day. It's not hard. It really isn't. You set alarms on your phone. You do exactly what it says. It's simple.
I love that. Your last book was about energy as well and having good energy. And I want to touch on that a little bit because you talked about chronotype. I think that's really important. But part of your chronotype is also when you exercise in the day, right? So can you talk about that for our audience?
Absolutely. Yeah. So energy and feeling energized comes from movement. So actually, I'm gonna keep referring back to Andy Galpin because he had a great part when you guys were podcasting.
We had a great pod together.
You really did. By the way, if anybody hasn't listened to that, go listen to it because you will learn a ton. So there's a difference between exercise and activity. Right? And that was one of the things he talks about. Exercise is formal. Activity is more, around and about. Here's what we're discovering is so few people do activity. Is they just go to the gym for 30 minutes, they get some exercise, and they don't have activity. And what that does over the course of time is very detrimental. So number one, joint health just flies out the window when you're sedentary, right? And by the way, when it hurts to walk and it hurts to lie down, you don't sleep well.
Exactly.
Right? So we see activity becoming very, very important. Also, by the way, single best way to improve sleep quality, exercise and activity.
Yeah.
Single best way. And I want to be more clear. It's not just exercise. And we need to break out cardio versus resistance versus stretching, right? So a lot of people don't even think about that. So look, I'm 56 years old. And you know what I used to do? I used to get on the bike and do a spin class. And then I would do a second spin class because I thought I would blow through more calories.
Right.
What a stupid idea that turned out to be. Right?
Yeah.
At age 56, here's what my routine is. I go to the gym every single day. I spend almost 20 minutes stretching because I don't feel like getting injured.
Right.
Because that's the thing that takes you out of the game, by the way, is if you get injured and you're out, you're not exercising for 3-4 weeks, you lose every bit of gains that you had, and now you're back to square one. So the goal at my age is don't get injured.
Sure.
Right? So I stretch for 20 minutes. Then I have a very specific resistance exercise. So I do 100 push-ups, 4 sets of 25. And I do, I have curls that turn into extensions. So I'm doing full body exercise with resistance. I have 3 sets of those in several different ways. And then I do, I get on the treadmill and I either walk or jog for 1 mile. Right?
Yeah.
And then every Friday, I do a 12-minute Cooper's test.
Yeah.
So I test my own VO2 max. So for folks out there who want to know what that is, so there's a great way to tell how well you are doing from a cardiovascular standpoint. It's called the VO2 max test. But there's an easy way to do it, which is the Cooper's test, which is a 12-minute run.
Right.
So you just run for 12 minutes, and then you look at the distance, and you can actually punch it into a table on the internet, and it'll tell you roughly, what your cardiovascular health is. Exactly. That's my whole routine. I'm out of there in 45 minutes.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love the weekly Cooper's test. That's really good because you can get a good estimate of your VO2 max. Yeah. And it tells you, and for people who don't know, VO2 max is the amount your body's utilizing oxygen at its maximal capacity. And you want that in your 50s, around 50s, somewhere in the 50s is where you want that to be.
Yeah. So for folks out there who want to know what that translates to, as an example, in 12 minutes, you want to probably, if you can, you want to get to 1.5 miles.
Yeah.
Right. If you can run 1.5 miles in 12 minutes, you are in great shape for a 50-year-old.
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah. And then I like how you separate activity versus exercise because you need both.
Absolutely.
You need that time at the gym, plus you got to stay active during the day.
So for me, it's walking my dogs.
Yeah.
Right. And I spend a lot of time with my dogs, which, by the way, I think is also good for my mental health. And that's part of my morning routine. So I forgot to mention, after I do the things that I was talking about with you, I have a meditation that I do every morning for 25 minutes.
Wow, 25-minute meditation. That's great.
Every single morning. And I do it with my dogs. So they come into the room. One of the dogs likes to sit in my lap while I'm meditating. The other sits next to me. I honestly think they're getting something out of it.
They probably are. I'm sure
I think they're digging on it. And by the way, it's nice getting a little unconditional love in the morning from my pups. Like, they're fantastic. So I layer that in. And look, it might sound like, oh my God, when does this guy have time to treat patients and do work and all these different things? These aren't heavy lifts. These are not large time swaths that are being taken out of my schedule. I'm a busy guy. You're a busy guy. But in order for me to be able to be this productive and be able to give out this much information in a way, shape, and form that people can understand it and do something with it, I have to be at my best. I have to be at my peak. And that means sleeping, drinking, breathing, exercise, movement, all of those things become incredibly important.
No, that's such great advice. On the exercise piece, one other thing that you mentioned in your last book is what time of day you should be exercising by your chronotype.
Absolutely. So let's break that down for a second. So remember, your chronotype: early bird, night owl, people in the middle, and then what we call a dolphin, which is somebody who's got very irregular sleep patterns, right? So early birds actually should be exercising earlier in the morning because that's when you have your exercise drive. That's when you have a lot more energy in that direction. But if you're a night owl like I used to be, like getting up for the gym at 6:30, there's no motivation that gets me up to them. I mean, not only do I hate mornings, like I hate morning people, right? Like they're all chipper and ready to go at 6 a.m. I'm a night owl guy. Like I'm strolling into the gym at 1 o'clock in the afternoon if we're lucky. As I've gotten older, that seems to have changed. So you notice how when you talk to your parents or your grandparents and you say, hey, I want to go to dinner, and they say, hey, I'll meet you at 4:30 at the diner, right? Because their circadian rhythm is advancing earlier. Same is starting to happen to me as I'm getting into my older years. At age 56, I'm noticing that being a night owl is actually starting to change a little bit. And now I'm starting to rise earlier. I'm starting to want to eat earlier. Things like that happen as well.
Wow, that's good. I mean, I think that timing your exercise, one thing I want to ask,
based on your chronotype.
Yeah, based on your chronotype was a game changer for me because I was trying to exercise in the afternoon, but really it's the morning when I should be exercising.
And your workouts were better, right?
Yeah, much better. The best part was I got it done with when I had the most energy.
Yeah.
I have the most energy in the morning. And so my workouts in the afternoon were never that good. And now the morning workouts are so much better. Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So much good information, man. Thank you so much for...
It's always a pleasure to hang out with you, buddy.
I love it. Your book came out how long ago?
December 5th.
December 5th. Okay, great.
So
we got to get this podcast out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So for folks out there, if you get a chance, please pick up a copy, write a review. Let me know what you think. This is my 5th book on sleep, so I've been talking about it for a lot, but this one's different. So you're going to learn different things in this than you would have learned in any of my other books. And to be fair, I don't think anybody's covered these topics quite this way.
Yeah, no, I love how concise it is, how easy of a read. And where else can people find you?
So I'm pretty much everywhere. I am The Sleep Doctor on every social media that you can find. That is my website, thesleepdoctor.com. And so if you're looking for me, I'm there. I'm also on TikTok, believe it or not. We have some very fun TikToks out there for people to get some good sleep information and things like that.
Fantastic. And I know you've done a million podcasts, and so just search your name.
Well, listen to this one for sure.
Yes.
But, at the end of the day, I think if you're looking for good, solid sleep information and things that are practical that can be helpful, I think I'm your guy.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for joining me.
It's been awesome.
Can't wait to have you on again.
Absolutely. I'll be here.